I would like to invite everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our town hall event this evening. And for those of you that may not know, I am Cameron Wrighton. My day job is the owner, general manager of KNND, the radio station down in Cottage Grove that serves all of South Lane and North Douglas counties. You have a very dedicated group of civic-minded community members that have asked me to be sort of an impartial moderator this evening. And I just want to say that it has been a pleasure kind of being an outsider looking in to a certain extent, watching these folks work and navigate through this. And put together an event that we hope will be meaningful for everyone who is with us tonight. Thank you to those of you who are here joining us in person, as well as those who may be watching and listening to us via the YouTube stream on the City of Cresswell YouTube channel. Also want to extend a huge thank you to the folks here at the New Hope Baptist Church for making these wonderful facilities available to us tonight. And we have an excellent panel here who will be giving us a lot of information this evening. And as I mentioned, these folks are very dedicated and I think are really trying to serve the community well. And from my perspective, I think regardless of our personal political persuasions, it's always nice when our elected officials follow through on what they promise us. So a question I've seen on social media is, hey, this thing happened 9 months ago. Why the heck are we still talking about it? Your elected officials promised a town hall, and tonight here we are. So I think they are to be commended for following through and putting in the effort to make this happen. I want to introduce our panel that we have here tonight. Cresswell Mayor Dave Stram. Also, City Councilors Shelley Clark, Alonzo Costilla, Misty Inman, Kevin Prachu, also Norma Jean Osborne, Tammy Shuck, City Manager Michelle Amberg is also with us tonight, and from the Lane County Sheriff's Office, Sergeant Scott Denham, and also Cresswell Chamber of Commerce President Bobby Ladley. And he's unable to be with us tonight, but he definitely deserves some recognition for his involvement in this. From the Cresswell School District, we have Tech Services and Facilities Operations Director Joel Higdon been very involved in this process as well. If you've had a chance to take a look at the agenda, what we would like to do for you this evening is we're going to begin with a presentation from our panel who will sort of walk us through what happened leading up to, during, and after July 4th of last year, how it happened. And a lot of the questions that some of you may have will likely be covered in that presentation. We have some questions that were submitted ahead of time, and we will be asking those of our panelists as well. Following that, we will be opening up the floor, so there will be an opportunity for those of you that perhaps did not get your questions answered to be able to pose those or make any other comments that you would like to share with our panel this evening. I would also just like to mention a couple of ground rules here. We understand that this is an issue that is one that sort of can bring up passionate feelings on all sides, but we will ask that everyone Please conduct yourselves in a respectful manner. At no time should there be any outbursts, vulgarity, personal attacks, any of that disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. And if that happens, you will be asked to leave. You can either do that under your own power or with the help of the sheriff's deputies that are on hand with us here tonight. That's your call. But we won't be tolerating any nonsense from anyone. So with that being gotten out of the way here, I think at this point would be a good time to bring our panel forward, and they have a little presentation for us.
Can you hear me? Just a little bit there, all right. I'm going to ask that the folks in the sound booth adjust the slides manually here, so you might see me pointing to the back now and then. That's just me giving them a cue. So we can go ahead and advance to the first slide tonight. And this is the timeline that we prepared. It's available, and you folks can actually bring it up on your phone right now if you want to, or if you are watching online, link u2.us/Cresswell is the URL, and you can follow along or you can check it out at your leisure anytime. So kind of go into a little bit about how this program works, just to give you a little insight in case you want to check it out. So go to the next slide there, please. So you can view this in a 3D view and travel through space if you'd like. Or you can go to the lower left and click there, and that'll give you a traditional two-dimensional view. When you go to any of these slides, you can see how you can advance back and forth across the timeline by sliding the bottom, and then click on any one of those things. We'll bring up a little bit of a description for you, and then furthermore, you can click that button inside and see any articles that we've linked to that help tell the story about what's going on there. So that makes it pretty, oh, yes, thank you for removing the base. And on the lower right hand is a control panel too, where you can kind of also adjust different aspects of the view. So that gives you a little bit of control over how that looks, including zooming in and out. A couple of other features there. And you can even search by just typing in something. So in this case, type in chamber, and then boom, you're going to get all the slides that have to do and have something that mentions the chamber. So that is how you navigate that. And I think that's, yeah, that ends that video. So we can go ahead and start the story here. So let's go to the next slide. So every story has a beginning, right? So how many of you remember 2 weeks to flatten the curve? So that all started a couple years ago, right? In fact, I think we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of that. So we started basically with kind of the things that led and kind of lead up to. So it builds up here. So we all went home. We all started doing all the things that we're supposed to do. Next slide, please. And then in July, there was, in 2020, so this is the year before last, we had the homemade parade. I thought that was a good parade, yeah. And mostly kept off of Oregon Avenue. It was in the side streets winding in and around Cresswell. It's pretty unofficial. Didn't cause any real issues. I think that was a great parade. I'll go ahead to the next one there, please. So, and then we moved into extreme risk in, let me make sure I've got this right here. Sometimes I need my glasses and sometimes I don't. But That happened January 29th, I believe, of 2021. And 25 counties that moved into extreme risk level. Some went to high level. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And so right around the February 22nd, about 9 months into the pandemic, is when the council kind of started to recognize that, hey, we might not be able to do a parade again this year. What can we do? So we began those discussions, and we'll go ahead and go to the next slide then, please. And then also, we started discussions with the school district, trying to figure out how we might handle the fireworks, because the restrictions that were in place, even tougher for the schools. They were more rules and stuff like that around what they could and couldn't do. And so we'll go ahead and move to the next slide then. And the city and the school district, again, are working at this point to confirm, I'm sorry, I messed up there. The chamber at that point was really kind of on the brink of disbanding. So they too were affected by the pandemic. They had all the things that happened when everybody else experienced pandemic conditions and such. They needed to figure out what they were going to do. So let's go to the next slide then. And at that point, they were even having a meeting to find out whether they should just disband and end. So they were really right on the brink there, but they didn't. Let's go to the next slide. So on the 22nd of March, the council then begins and picks up that discussion again. And we started thinking about maybe what other activities that we might be able to put on, things that we could do as a city, because we really don't have staff that do event planning, that type of thing. So we were just trying to figure out what it was that we might be able to do. Then the next slide, the chamber does reset. They come back to life and start thinking about how they might be able to, at least in some way, fill the gap. So moving to the next slide then, on the 15th of April, the restrictions that we thought were going to be in place were still in place. And so we couldn't, we were restricted from doing large gatherings. And so that'll take us to the next slide, where then the chamber is starting to kind of get a feel for what things are going to be like for them. They come in, they check out their new office and get the members, the new members acquainted. So remember, the chamber at this point, and there's all new folks mostly, just trying to get adjusted to what they were going to be doing. Next slide then, please. So the council in April of 2021 continues their discussions regarding the festivities on the 4th of July. Click here. And next slide then, please. At that point, Lane County in April 30th, 2021 moves to extreme risk. So now it's even looking like, oh man, you know, we thought maybe things were going to get better, but no, we're in extreme risk now. So next slide, please. The chamber then starts to think, well, maybe there's a new place that we can find that maybe since the school district is not able to provide the school facilities for setting off the fireworks, maybe we'll find a new spot. So next slide is that the Bald Knob area was actually offered up as a potential location, which was perfect. Seemed like a great idea, so they received approval to use that site. And then we go to the next slide, where it's celebration is posted on social media. So this is about the middle of May, 18th to be exact, where social media posts start showing up. And an event that appears that it would be hosted over at TJ's. And the listed hosts at that time were Chris Tuff and Janira Brannigan, I believe is the name I see here. Hopefully I didn't say that wrong. Okay. Following me still, guys? So the next slide, please, is when the fireworks permit approval happened, the 20th of May, and which was really great news because at that point, at least there was a few things that we could do that would be fun for folks. Next slide then is that the parade posts that start showing up in social media. Earlier, the celebration for the 4th didn't include the parade, but then that was added to it, and so that was when some of us got the first idea that maybe there would be an alternate parade plan. Next slide is TJ's celebration planning continues. So Robert Jensen submits the OLCC special use application to expand sales to the parking lot, stage music, speakers, conversation, all that good stuff. Next slide, please. Right around the 8th of June, somewhere between the 8th and the 10th, Chris posts on social media and specifically mentions the parade, that there was going to be one. So then we move to the next slide, and that's when we actually went down to low risk. So then we were starting like, okay, you know, at least low risk is better than high risk, right? So, and next slide then is that liquor license for TJ's was approved by council. So we were all in agreement on that one, I believe. And then the next slide is basically the early conversations, this is the beginning of the conversations that Chris had with LCSO regarding parade. And it was a brief conversation, and I believe at that point that it was then mentioned that the special events permit would be required, just like for anybody. All right, next slide then, please. So about the 17th of June is when that plan at TJ's started to fizzle, and basically at that point the organizers had not yet approached anybody at the sheriff's office or the city about a permit yet for the parade, even though the TJ's celebration didn't happen. I think that was the idea, is the parade still would happen. All right, then we'll go to the next slide, please. So the 17th of June is the time when Chris did come down to City Hall and he picked up the paperwork for the parade permit. And he was encouraged several times at that point to turn in paperwork for the permit, but one was not turned in. Then around the 23rd of June is when more rumors kind of started to appear on social media. It was about that time that things like the city denying a permit came up, and that was even picked up by media. But no permit had actually been even applied for, and never was. I'll go to the next slide then, please. So then Governor Brown does say on the 25th of June that Oregon's going to reopen. And that takes us to the next slide. But then dry conditions. How many of you remember how hot it was? It was like super hot. And so everything was just dry as a bone, and the chamber was notified at that, just a few days, really, maybe I think about a week before, that they were going to have to water everything down. So that's on the next slide, is that, we got to water everything. I'm going to go to the next slide. Chris stops by LCSO again, talks with Sergeant Denham, and assures that the parade is under control. He's got everything handled, but he's still encouraged to, even though it's that late in the game, still encouraged to apply for the permit. City was willing to work with him on that. All right, next slide then, please. That takes us up to the 3rd of July, where the staging announcement of where the folks would be staging for the parade. And that even included, at one point, mention of a flag-waving caravan in the afternoon afterwards that was going to happen at Tractor Supply, but that didn't materialize either. All right, and then the next slide here is where, now I picked this picture out. I'm not sure if it really looked like that, but they did put 25,000 gallons of water all over that area there, the fallout area from the fireworks. So that was quite an undertaking just in itself. And so then we'll go to the next slide. Actually, you're on it there. And that's the beginning, the day of the parade. And again, it was mentioned that the permit needed to happen, and that it would be essentially considered an illegal parade if it happened. So that was about the 3rd warning, I think, at that point. That would potentially carry some fines or something associated like that. So, and then on July 4th, on the next slide, the parade proceeds as planned, and basically what did happen there as a result of the parade is that there was a blocking of traffic right there at the railroad tracks. I think that I'd seen some photos there. Basically, that route was cut off where people couldn't come through and over the railroad tracks into town. Also, there was, because there were no blockades or anything like that in place there was two-way traffic going up and down Oregon Avenue, people mixing into the traffic, candy being thrown out, kids going out and grabbing candy, kind of unsafe conditions there. So, and then we move on to the next slide. The activity is basically monitored at that point. Just keeping an eye on it. There was only a couple of deputies even in town because earlier in the day there was a homicide that basically took a bulk of any available personnel that there were out to that. So we didn't really have anybody that could have helped to respond to any thing going on in Cresswell at that time. Most were busy with that. And then we can go to the next slide there, where the media publications that report on the parade. And unfortunately, some of the media outside of town, mostly, that caught and reported incorrectly on some of the things that happened. They included that a permit was denied. That wasn't the case. So in some ways, I think that those stories didn't help us all out. But and then let's go to the next slide there, where basically the fines were handed out. And then, well, that really took us up to the point where we started to hear back from folks about the parade. What's that? About the fine? I'd say two of the organizers of the controversial 4th of July parade in Cresswell are facing fines for not having a permit. And Yep, hang on. And then Sergeant Scott Denham with the Lane County Sheriff's Office said that it's a safety issue because the parade affected traffic and put young children in danger when people threw candy in the streets. All right. So then after that is when we heard from a lot of people, emails, people that attended the council meetings and such like that. And so it was right about the September, October timeframe where we were starting to discuss maybe having a town hall meeting so that we could hear from folks about how they felt about it. So, and that kind of leads us up to where we are today. So I think we can probably conclude with that. There's a few other events on here, but I kind of want to bring those up maybe after the panel discussion, so because they happen in the future. So, all right. Now I kind of blew through that pretty fast because I only gave us 20 minutes, so I didn't read every slide, obviously. So if you have questions about those things, you can certainly ask those. And I think that if there's anything that I said that maybe wasn't quite right, I welcome the panel to correct me on any of those things. So, all right. Okay. So that's over. Back to you, Cameron.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Prachu. We had, prior to the event, some invitations that we put out via social media to submit questions if folks perhaps wanted to ask those anonymously. We have about a half a dozen of those here. I am going to move through those with our panelists at this point, and while I certainly do encourage the utmost candor from the panel whenever possible, I do want us to remember that some of our panelists weren't in their current positions either before, during, or in the immediate aftermath of the events. So if they opt to do so, they may decline to all individually answer specific questions if they feel that's most appropriate. So the first question that was submitted online reads as follows. Did the city refuse to assist with the permit process because management did not like persons involved? Who'd like to take that one?
Thank you for that question. No, we did not refuse anyone who actually came and wanted to discuss having a permit with us. What we were finding ourselves in a situation of was we were under orders from the governor not to have large gatherings. And so that was a problem. To have a parade without a large gathering doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we were not issuing permits because we were not able to have large gatherings. However, that decision changed as the COVID situation changed. As it went from high to low, we saw that it would indeed be possible to have this parade, and it was encouraged at that time that the parade organizers come in and get a permit for the parade. And I spoke with them personally and said, we will work with you. The timing was tough because it was beyond the actual timing for when you had to submit a permit, but I did say I would work with you. Yes, I did. I most certainly did. And I would have worked with you on getting a permit for the parade.
Anyone else?
You mentioned that you were denying permits.
Excuse me, sir. You will be provided an opportunity later to pose questions, but we're not there yet.
You said anyone else, I apologize.
No, I apologize. I meant anyone else on the panel. Okay, looks like we're moving along. If the celebration was a peaceful protest, would the city have ordered the arrest of the participants? Panel.
Is this on? Okay. The city doesn't order the arrest of anyone. The city can only ask that the ordinances be, that are in place, that the city council, either prior or current, puts into place. So those ordinances are voted on by the city council, which is a council that is voted on through the democratic process by the people. And if they ask that the ordinances are enforced within their city, then we, by obligation, upon probable cause, need to be able to enforce those ordinances. And in this case, the city didn't order anything. The city just asked that their ordinances be enforced, like they always do every single day that we are here. So that's why they were enforced.
Thank you, Sergeant Denham. Any other panelists? Okay. Number 3 is kind of a follow-on to that. Nothing bad happened. Why was the parade a big deal? Panel?
As you can watch through parades anywhere, you can see parades that have happened since then that bad things happened at. The reason that we have the parameters in place that get reviewed by Public Works, by the city planner, by the sheriff's office, and by everybody else involved is so that we make sure that we have proper barricades, proper road closures, everything in place so that we make as much of an airtight area as we can so that somebody can't just drive through the parade, not even knowing it's a parade or knowing it's a parade and do something inappropriate. So we put those parameters in place as a part of that permitting process to make it safer. The parade needs to be safe. If it was just a public protest, the ordinances would still be in place for that. And you can look up every court case you want to and read it, and I've read several of them all the way through. If there's a permitting process for a special event, folks are asked to go through that special permit event. If you're just having a peaceful protest that's not blocking roads or violating ordinances, that's free speech. Have at it. That's encouraged.
So I'd add on to that, at least in my mind, I'm just kind of speaking for myself, we don't do a permitting process based on what did or didn't happen. We do it for what could happen. And that process includes purchasing insurance to cover liability in case something happens. It also bears repeating, too, that on that day, if there had been an incident here in Cresswell that required a larger response in some way, that it's doubtful that could have happened because, like I mentioned, there was a homicide investigation. Where was that, up at Fall Creek or something, you remember? Yeah, so. Fall Creek down to London Road. Right, so it's, you can say, hey, nothing happened and so it was all good, but what if it didn't? What if something really nasty would have happened that would have required more law enforcement? We wouldn't have been able to do it. But with planning, we could have made sure that was there, at least in some fashion. So that's kind of my take on it. Any other panelists want to add on?
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. In that case, I'll... do we have something else? Okay.
I was just going to add that the reason why we have a permit process in place is because there are a lot of things to take into consideration when you have a parade or a special event. One of the things is making sure that there's barricades so that there is a clearly delineated path that the parade is going to take. Another is bathrooms for the people who show up and need to use the restroom. There are things such as letting the neighbors know that their driveway or their street is going to be blocked off by, for quite some time, by a parade. There are a lot of things to take into consideration in addition to the insurance that was mentioned. And we also ask that the people notify the fire department so that they know that there's a parade in case they need to make an emergency they need to, in an emergency, they need to go to an address that may be blocked by a parade or some special event. This isn't just for parades. This is also for, if somebody wanted to do a 5K in town, they would have to do the same thing. This is to make sure that the public has access to the streets that they normally would expect. If, in fact, there is a special event, we notify the public that they will not be able to use the normal streets and that they need to use some other route to get to where they need to go. There is a lot to planning a special event, and that's why we ask that the permits be taken out and filled out and returned.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager Amberg. Mr. Prachu?
Well, speaking of special events, how many of you ever have to use the restroom? So that's another thing that when you're planning an event like this, and especially because it was fairly well advertised, right? So there's a lot of people potentially coming into town, children, people, they all need to use the restroom. In an event like this, that would also include maybe bringing in extra porta potties and things like that to accommodate the folks that were pouring into Crestwell that day. So just another thing to kind of add on and why it kind of helps to do the planning in a way that makes sure that all those needs are taken care of so everybody can have a good time.
Okay. Any other panelists? All right. Why didn't the former mayor stand up for the city when a former city council member blasted our little town nationwide? Mr. Castilla?
Sure. It's on. Can you hear me? My opinion is that that is something that the former mayor should speak to. I cannot answer for someone who is not here. I think that would be inappropriate for me to speak for somebody else. Why? I don't know.
Any other panelists? Okay. What kind of legal action has been taken against our prior mayor for endangering people and horses during last year's parade? Mr. Denham?
I'll give that in three parts. The first one is no one ever reported anything of that nature to the sheriff's office. They reported it to Facebook. I'm sorry, I don't report to Facebook or get dispatch from Facebook. Secondly, what was reported might vaguely amount to the improper use of a horn, a traffic violation. And in the state of Oregon, you cannot, an officer, deputy, anybody that's law enforcement is not able to cite somebody for a violation of traffic that doesn't occur in their presence, unless they are investigating the traffic crash. So no crash, no citation because no one saw it. And I'm sorry, but that's the legislature. If you don't like that rule, change it. The legislature can change that rule just by a vote of the legislature. But we don't get to go around that. If it doesn't happen in our presence, we can't do it. Thirdly, if we were to consider that to be a crime, it would vaguely be the crime of disorderly conduct, where in the statute, basically one line says unreasonable noise, and two lines down there from that, it says blocking traffic or the roadway. So in that scenario, I have one person who somebody says honked a horn at a horse. I have another person who is blocking the roadway. And third, I have a horse that is violating the city ordinance. Which one do I charge? Or do I charge all of them? But as a traffic violation, it didn't happen in our presence, so we can't charge that as a violation.
I think we saved the best question for last, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We get to end this portion on a little bit of a lighter note. Looking ahead to 2022, will there be pancakes?
Which one of you put that in there?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ladley. That brings us, oh, I'm sorry.
And if you show up for the pancakes, you'll probably see me there volunteering. So I would encourage you all to volunteer.
And thank you, Mr. Costilla.
I'm going to volunteer to eat the pancakes.
All right. Well, looking at the time here, we're doing pretty well. We're going to try to get you out of here by 7:30, so we still have plenty of time. We're going to wrap up with a little bit more looking forward to 2022. But before we do that, we will now open up the microphone to any of you that would like to make comments or have questions that you feel were not adequately addressed during the proceedings thus far. We will not require that you give us your address. However, for the record, we do need you to provide your name and community of residence. I would once again just reiterate, please keep your comments respectful and devoid of personal attacks. So with that being said, the microphone is open.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes, sir.
Cameron, how you doing? It's Chris Warren. Good to see you, buddy. Used to work with him at KNND. So I have a comment, and I'll follow it up with a question.
Chris, could you please provide us with your community of residence, sir?
Thurston. I was at the event. It went very, very smoothly. Yes, some kids ran into the first couple of feet of the streets when some candy was thrown at them. Perhaps that wasn't wise. However, the event went well, and from what I've heard right here, basically the biggest complaint is that you guys didn't give permission for people to exercise their constitutional right of assembly. Nobody broke any traffic laws except for the mayor. And the mayor made it her cause to disrupt this entire event, and also went on Facebook and created a whole bunch of other issues. This entire event was as wonderful of a 4th of July parade that I have ever participated or been to, I should say, in my life, and it was great. It was great for the city and the people that showed up in the hundreds and hundreds, perhaps even thousands. I couldn't really tell looking up and down the street. If you're going to cite the people that went ahead and set this thing up simply by encouraging people to come and be part of a parade, then you have to cite all the people that showed up and supported the parade as well. And it's simply wrong that here we are in March of 2022 still fighting over this 4th of July parade that was an American tradition. And you guys ought to be ashamed of yourselves for even putting this thing together in the first place. And if it's all about breaking some minor little laws here and there, and that's it, then let's let it go and move forward, shall we? The fact that you guys, I've been to the courts when Julie has been in there after being cited, and I've seen how she's been treated. I've seen all this hullabaloo over masks in court and all the rest of it, and we already know, masks don't work. So this whole thing has the benefit of hindsight now, and the way that it's been handled is absurd, to say the least. There was no reason whatsoever that this thing shouldn't have gone on. It went on smoothly. The only fire happened was with the citywide fireworks later on. So this whole thing is just ludicrous to me to see it happening the way it is. My question: are you going to do this again next year or this year, I should say, when Governor Brown demands we all start wearing masks as we get closer to the November election? Because this is all about politics. The words that you didn't put in that little slide presentation was Proud Boys. That's the word you guys didn't say. Because a couple of Proud Boys showed up, that's what caused the entire ruckus right here. And you guys are taking it out on Julie. That's not fair. You took it out on Chris Tuff. That's not fair. And we need to put an end to this thing because it is ludicrous. It happened. Nobody got hurt. Let's move on and let's do better next 4th of July.
Okay, thank you, sir. Excuse me, we need to, I'm going to ask that all displays of emotion, support, lack thereof, please refrain from that. Thank you. Would anyone like to answer Chris's question from the panel?
I can speak to some of that. First of all, you mentioned this event tonight, and that it's about 9 months later than it happened. But recognize too that the council heard you guys when you showed up in July, and we immediately realized that we needed to have a community conversation like this one. And so I was just kind of jumping back and looking at some of the minutes from the council meetings, and we were talking about it in July and then in August. And then we had a turnover in the council, mayor resigned, and that kind of put some things on hold, and I'll take responsibility for that in the sense that we prioritized the process and figuring out our process for selecting an interim mayor to happen first, and then we picked up the discussion again about the town hall. So I'll take the blame for the fact that this is so much later, but know too that we even recognized, we were like, this is like much later now. Is this even really a thing anymore? Do people even really want to talk about this? And we thought, well, we could not do it, but then we thought we'd be breaking a promise if we didn't do it. So the reason that we're up here tonight is largely in part because we wanted to keep our promise. So that's what I would say about that part of it. Does anybody else want to speak to any of the other things that were mentioned?
I'll speak a little. I would agree with some of what you said, and I would disagree with some of what you said. But I don't want to argue with you. I want to do like what you said. Let's get it over with and move on. And a part of the reason I think we're here tonight is kind of what Councilor Prachu said, is in August, I believe the people that showed up at the city council meeting and the council that was present at that time, we heard what you said. And I was sincere. I was part of a group that said, we're going to do this. So for me, that was very important. I'm a volunteer, small town, puny town politician, what you said. And I didn't want to be one that went back on something they said they were going to do. The easy thing to do was to, let's forget about this. Let's just not even talk about it anymore. That would be the easy thing to do. It's not easy for me to be up here right now, but we're here and we're talking about it and we're going to work through it. And yes, we're going to do better next time. We will strive to do better.
So just to address the last part, which for me is the most important, right? Absolutely, from the chamber's perspective, we are moving forward. We already have permits pulled for things that are going to happen 4th of July, and we absolutely will have a 4th of July celebration. Again, more in line with what has historically happened and what you're accustomed to. So Alonzo mentioned it earlier, but we'll take all the volunteers we can get because we certainly need the help, but we're absolutely 100% committed, and we will have 4th of July this year.
Okay. Mr. Prachu?
You guys can put your heads down. We'll get you after this. So I have to say, you mentioned that the fireworks, and that was like where the real fire came from. But that certainly wasn't without. The chamber. There was probably 4 or 5 of you guys that went out and watered, put that 25,000 gallons of water on that stuff. They tried. They really did. They were really trying to help you guys out. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to the folks that worked hard to put the show on. That they really did try. So, just my thoughts. All right, we can go ahead and take our next.
Okay. Next person, please feel free to come up to the mic, give us your name and community of residence, and we're going to try to keep each person to the 4-minute mark.
Good evening. My name is Karen Hancock. I live in Eugene. And I just wanted to say that I was a very joyous participant in the 4th of July parade in Cresswell last year. And it was so much fun, and all of the people that lined the streets were so happy to have a celebration on that day. I didn't know of any other ones, so I was really happy. And I'd like to say that my observation is that the only one committing a crime was Governor Brown for putting these mandates on us and stop us from living a normal lives. So that's what I have to say, and thank you.
All right, next person up.
Do we have any panel responses first? So yeah, give us a chance to respond
Okay.
If we can.
All right.
Which I did want to respond, at least, because I know that the masks thing is huge, you guys. I really get it. And during the whole pandemic, from beginning to end, you imagine the amount of data that was coming at us that, first of all, I think in the beginning, it's like, masks are no good. They're useless. And then, masks are good now. And then later on, masks are no good. And back and forth. You could go and find data that will support whatever opinion you like the most. But from an elected official's position, we have to opt for what we think at that time is the safest thing for folks. It's not that we want to impose masks. It's not because I was really glad when we were able to stop wearing them. So I'm just know that we understand the frustrations of that whole thing, and that we do care, and that most, for a lot of us, we were just opting based on what we knew and the data that we had at the time. So, just my thought.
Thank you, sir. Any other panelists? Okay.
Hey, Cameron. This
Anyone
is Chris
from the
Tuff.
audience? Thank you, sir.
I live in Cottage Grove.
Okay, 4 minutes, sir.
So, elected officials means you guys work for your constituents, the people in this city, right? You've been elected to do a job for us. So you work for us. So when one of us, doesn't matter who you voted for, what you believe, comes in and is willing to sit down and figure things out and is treated poorly by someone that is an elected official, we had 4 different people come in and ask about permits. Each one of them was treated very poorly, myself included, based off of what somebody has seen off social media of me. And many people I actually invited to come sit down with me, have a cup of coffee, and get to know me. Don't judge me what you're seeing off of social media. Because anybody that knows me in this community, I've been in this community a very long time, and I have done many things for this community, and never asking for any kind of recognition or anything of the such, because I've done it because it's the right thing to do. Now, people have fought and died in this country for us to have the rights that we do. If people choose to live in fear, that is your choice. For those of us that have chosen not to live in fear, and to move forward with traditions and things that we're accustomed to, that is our right to do so. I told Sergeant Denham I was more than willing to accept responsibility for certain things, which I did and I have. But I do believe that there was a huge mishandling of this whole situation by elected officials. I myself came in and asked for help. How do I do this? And instead, we had a lot of volunteers that came together, and we made this a very safe event. You may not have known that, but we had a lot of people there making sure that this was a safe event. We had people that are very experienced in these types of events that took part and made sure that people were safe. And actually, there was another fire. Somebody drove out to the event that we had afterwards and lit fireworks, mortars, and blew them into dry brush. And it took quick. I called the fire department, Danny Soulsby, and I said, I need you guys out here. Luckily, we had brought 7,500 gallons of water, and we had that fire put out before the fire department came. Never anywhere in all the slander on myself and other volunteers in this was that ever mentioned. Nor was it ever mentioned the great planning that we took to make sure that this was safe, that it was a safe event. Now, I understand you guys have a job to do because you're elected officials. That's the reason I was more than willing to take responsibility for not having a permit. But at the same time, if you're not willing to work with the people in your town based off of who they vote for or what they believe or what you think of them off of social media, then maybe things like this wouldn't happen. But this parade did start out just the way we did it, by people in this town that decided this town needed a parade, and that's what they did. And they didn't ask for permission from anybody to do it. I understand things have changed, times have changed, but certain people chose to live in fear. So for those of us that don't, we will accept consequences for our actions if you choose to live in fear. People choose, especially our elected officials.
Excuse me, Mr. Tuff, you're at the 4-minute mark. Can you wrap it up, please, sir?
So before you guys judge me off of what you're seeing off social media and all this other crap, maybe take the time to reach out or take the invitation of a cup of coffee.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone on the panel like to respond? Mr. Prachu.
I'm responding a lot. Some of the others can join in. Yeah, I will. Thank you, Julie. So, Chris, if you would recall, we were both on KNND, I think, a couple days after the event, and I invited you out to coffee because I thought I would like to hear what you have to say about this, and I never heard back from you. And I really wish that you had taken me up on that because I would have listened.
After all the slander, I was kind of bent.
Well, I didn't slander you. So, but anyway, that's, you know.
I'm still being slandered. This is slander.
All right. So, anyway, I would have had a conversation with you. I would.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else from the panel? Okay. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. Alonzo, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'll have to comment. Yeah, Mr. Tuff, for me, I wish you wouldn't lump me in that group that you just mentioned. I don't do social media. I just met you first time here tonight. So, and I didn't get an invitation for coffee, and I sure would have went with you, okay? So, that's it.
All right. Thank you. Next audience member, the microphone is yours.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm from Eugene, and I have participated and ridden in the Cresswell Parade for over 14 years, and I just want to say that 4th of July experience is one of our best family memories to celebrate. We have an absolute blast, but I will say, and everybody who ever has been there will know, that the children always run out. We always have to tell them to get away from the vehicles when you're throwing candy or popsicles or this and that. With that said, You know, a lot of you have mentioned doing the right thing, having a cup of coffee. Why don't you start by repealing that ticket, refunding the man's money, and saying, let's do this on a new foot. Let's step out and
All right,
do the
please
right
hold
thing.
down the displays,
Okay?
folks. Thank you.
Because that goes a long way. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's overturn that ticket. Let's give the guy his money back and say thank you for putting forth our freedoms. Because here's the thing. Governor Brown, I'm a nurse. I'm an intensive care nurse, okay? And I have been through this pandemic, and I will tell you something. Governor Brown's mandates are not based on science. The data doesn't change, okay? Science is what it is, and it does not change. It's how it's interpreted. It's how it's twisted. And it's being twisted in a way to remove our freedoms. And if your freedoms are being taken away, guess who is responsible for maintaining them? It's you guys. You all have been elected to push people back from taking away our freedoms one by one by one. And that is the agenda that is out there. And if you don't know it, you need to know it. You need to start looking, because it is real. It is happening. I don't have a tin hat on, okay? I'm telling you. You look at Harrisburg, okay? They have written their own ordinance to protect, their members. You look at some other small cities. They have written their own ordinance to protect their freedoms. I encourage you all to look into it. You have been elected to protect our freedoms. And when you don't do it, you will get the boys, the Proud Boys coming out. And I want to ask on that measure. Now, the Proud Boys will come out when our freedoms are being trampled on, okay? And I have seen them do nothing but protect peaceful protesters. I've been one of those protesters. Have you ever cited or been asked to cite a Black Lives Matter protester who broke the city ordinance? Because we have seen them be violent. We have seen them break the law. We have seen them trample on our own freedoms and rights to safety and protection, and people trashing our cities. But I haven't seen a single one of them get a ticket. And I'm just wondering, has the county here or the council members ever asked you to write a ticket? Because you mentioned earlier that you have been asked to enforce county ordinance when you were asked if you were told to write tickets or enforce things. So that's one of my questions. The other question is it Amber, is that right? You had mentioned that you never told anybody, or the slideshow said nobody was ever told that they couldn't have a permit. And yet when you spoke, you said we weren't able to give out permits. We couldn't approve them at that time. So that's kind of doublespeak to me. I mean, it kind of shows that there's some holes in the story here, and that maybe there are two sides to it, and maybe he was denied a permit. Just saying.
Okay, thank you. Panel?
I'll let her take the last portion. Your first comment about a great parade and 14 years in the parade, I've supervised the parade for the last 6 years and put into place and checked the parameters to make sure that all of the roads were blocked off so that we had a one-way traffic, a one-way parade, and that was the only thing in the street. That way we don't have people going the wrong direction or other ways. In this particular instance, yeah, kids are running out in the other parades to get candy, which is strictly forbidden by the parade rules, but that's the parade's rules, that's not a city ordinance. I didn't cite anybody for throwing candy out into the road, even though it was reckless endangering. The reason for that is because the roads weren't closed. You had a traffic guy stopping traffic so that people could turn a corner. That was it. And I ran the whole parade multiple times. So if a little kid runs out on the road with traffic going the other direction, that is a recipe for one child to get injured, one child to get killed. And that's not gonna happen on my watch, which is why I stopped the lead vehicle and yelled at him, because Uncle Sam was throwing candy out into the street. And little kids with traffic coming the other way, one being myself, were running out in the middle of the road. I myself had to slam on my brakes because kids were running out in the middle of the road. There were cars pulled over to the side of the road to let the giant flag through. Now, I love the giant flag, don't get me wrong, but I'm as patriotic as the next guy, believe me, all right? I've served in the military, I've served in this county, I've served in other counties, but I'm not gonna let a little kid run out on the road because everybody wants to do their own thing. We needed roadblocks, and that's the reason that the parade needs a permit. That's the only reason. I don't care who's in the parade. I don't care what the parade theme is. If we're gonna have a march down the road with a bunch of vehicles and a lot of people watching, then we need to have a permit so that roadblocks get put in place. As to your second part, has anybody in the city asked me to cite someone from any other group? No, because they don't ask me to cite people from other groups. They don't ask me to cite anybody from the parade group, and I don't care who was in the parade. I have no qualms for who's who. If someone violates an ordinance that is truly a violation of an ordinance, go back a little while later, a little prior to that, when we had dueling sides of the street with one group and another. We didn't give any citations because we couldn't articulate that there was an actual reason for a citation. People on both sides of that group were on the sidewalks. Some of them were in the street or across a roadway, and they let cars go by every time that they came in. That's not a violation of the ordinance. So, no one's asked me to cite anybody else because the city doesn't ask me to cite people.
Sergeant-
Unless it's on behalf of somebody that makes a complaint.
Sergeant Denham, if I could go off script here and ask a little bit of a follow-up question, can you detail the process for determining who was cited after the parade?
After I evaluated multiple photographs and other postings on social media, anything that I could get my hands on as an investigative tool, because when I'm investigating something, I go full board. My discussion was with the sheriff and the command staff of the sheriff's office and how we should proceed, and that was the determination that we decided, was that we had 2 identified organizers of the parade, and that was the decision that we took. Many of the people who were participating in the parade or who were identified in the parade live in multiple areas as far as McKenzie Bridge or Portland or Salem or multiple other areas, and we just don't have the staffing or the resources to go try to track a bunch of people down to cite every single person as was asked for earlier. So we took the route that we felt was the most efficient and the best way, and that was at the determination of myself in conjunction with the sheriff.
Okay, any other responses from the panel?
I'd like to respond. My name is Michelle, and there is a truth to what you said, that when the COVID levels were high and we were under a lot of mandates, we made it well known that we would not be putting out any permits for a parade or any public gathering. However, the city did change its position once that we went down to a lower level of COVID awareness, or lower level of COVID warning, restrictions. So yes, there were two different times, and we were following the COVID restriction rules. We did, and something that hasn't been mentioned, and maybe it doesn't need to be mentioned, but we did plan a 4th of July event out at the airport that was very well attended, and it did follow the COVID restrictions. We had the spacing, and we had the masks, and we tried to follow the rules and regulations at that time.
All right, any other panelists? Okay, we will get the next taker from the audience up to the microphone.
Yeah, Ed Gunderson, Cresswell resident. We accept certain restrictions as a social contract for safety and peace. And that safety and peace was broken due to a lack of a permit. And for me, it was an inconvenience. I couldn't get out of either of my entries at my place. I had guests coming, but didn't know that there was going to be a parade the size of the parade that there was. And so they couldn't get to my place when they planned to get to my place. And they felt very uncomfortable about, what they saw in the parade. And then after the parade, I was tasked with, I have a lot of frontage on Oregon Avenue and also on A Street. And this year, I was tasked with a lot of debris to pick up. Now before, with the previous parades, there was always somebody that came through and cleaned up, but that didn't happen this year. And that's one of the reasons for the parade. And then another thing that happened, and many of the same people were upset about the fines for the parade, the unpermitted parade. They organized another gathering and drove through Cresswell with horns blaring for about 30 minutes. And that was not very pleasant. I was trying to be outside with some friends for lunch. My wife was at a party with some other people, a birthday party. It totally disrupted both events. And that's the whole thing about having some of these rules, which we've asked our city councils to, adopt, and we asked the sheriff to enforce so that we can have peace and security. And I really wish more people had been cited for that parade to kind of send a message, and I wish the fines had been higher to send a message, because this was a breakdown of law and order. And I wasn't very happy about it, but it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any responses from the panel?
I'll just say in the second event that he mentioned, there were no articulable violations or crimes that anybody either reported or were observed.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant Denham.
I would like to say that I appreciate you pointing out that we do have ordinances in this community that have been vetted through the community, and that not having a parade permit is in violation of those ordinances. And that is a serious concern to the people who live here in Cresswell.
I'll make a comment. I was not mayor at the time. I was the former mayor of the former mayor of the former mayor, if that makes any sense to you. So I go way back. And interestingly, I was in Cresswell before the parades ever started, many years ago, and I remember watching the first parade because I went out because we had a boy from the church I pastored here who was going to be playing in the marching band that had never marched before, but was being thrown together for the parade that we'd never had before. So I remember walking down Oregon Avenue, and there was really no one out. There were no chairs lining the sidewalks, as you know. Now you have to go out a day in advance if you want to put a chair out. And just walking downtown and watching this ragtag group of kids from Cresswell High School march down the road and playing their songs, and some other people, and that was the first parade. It was a long time ago. And it's been my privilege during the 6 years I was mayor to walk in the parade every year. So when we become members of the council, we go through all kinds of training, because rarely do you have a counselor that really has any background in politics. And I had no background in politics, those of you who know my background in Cresswell. So a part of that training is we learned something called Home Rule Charter, which we talked about a while back. And I never forgot that from the time I was mayor the first time around. Home Rule Charter. I think you were referring to Harrisburg and some other communities that have established some ordinances. Brownsville. Okay, Brownsville. So Home Rule Charter says that within a governing boundary, a city in this particular instance, if you have a charter, which every city must have a charter, then you have some rights to establish ordinances. We've thrown that word around a lot tonight. Essentially, the ordinance is a law. You have rights within that boundary to establish laws for your city. We're trained in our training that they can't supersede county laws, state laws, or federal laws, that our level of responsibility only goes so far. But we do establish Home Rule Charter. And what that means is that those elected to the city of Cresswell have a responsibility for people who live in Cresswell to establish ordinances that we think make sense for whatever. And we establish all kinds of ordinances. We have a charged responsibility to make sure that the people who live in Cresswell get sewer, water, public safety, parks, and the list goes on. Those are basically services that we provide. And one of those services is that we have a responsibility to make sure that our streets are safe and passable and our sidewalks. So, for instance, last night I appointed a roads ad hoc committee for Cresswell, because if you drive through Cresswell very much, you see a lot of our roads and sidewalks. Sidewalks don't exist many places. Roads are sometimes in bad repair, cost a lot of money. So we're responsible to take care of our roads because the city and the county and the federal government, they're not going to take care of the roads in Cresswell. We have to do it. In like manner, we have to make sure, I'll wrap it up quickly, we have to make sure that our streets are safe for our residents, which leads us to permits for all kinds of things. And we're charged with that responsibility. We have to establish, how do we do events in Cresswell that are safe for Cresswellians, and what's required, which is what leads us to the establishment of ordinances, permits, and things like that. So, yes, we do establish them because we have a responsibility. We have a home rule charter. We have to do those things that make it safe for people who live in Cresswell. So that's kind of the background, I think, on all the permitting. I know that we will be reviewing our entire permitting process in the next 6 months. I can tell you that. So that's one thing that has come out of this. Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay.
To be clear on the permitting process, in order to hold the National Night Out event that we do every August in the city park, that I host and bring some of my fellow deputies down, I have to submit a special events request. So I'm not absolved from following the same ordinances that the rest of the city has to.
Thank you, sir. Looks like we have a few more of you that would like to make comments this evening. We certainly want to offer everyone the opportunity to have their say who would like to do so. So Kevin and I were just talking here. Looks like we might overshoot 7:30 a little bit, so I want to thank our panel for hanging out a little longer than we thought this evening. But at this point, I'll invite our next audience member to the microphone.
Michelle from Springfield, and I only have 2 words: Independence Day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next one up.
My name is Stacy Holt, and I live in Cresswell. First of all, I want to say that they did clean up after themselves. That's just propaganda, unless I see pictures otherwise. Because I know the party organizers, and I know the time that they took to make sure they didn't leave a mess. So I also want to say that the only thing that anyone saw in that parade was American pride. That's it. And then I need to set one record a little straight. It was kind of indicated that you had been talking about doing a town hall for a while, right? And failed to mention the fact that it was because one of your community members asked for it and came up to the microphone at a city council meeting and asked for it. And that was me. And so I want to apologize for being 45 minutes late. I started a new job yesterday and got out as quick as I could today. But I do appreciate you doing this. However, I am very disappointed in how long it took, because my purpose when I asked for this was to provide a forum for the community to find a way to heal. And this far away from that, I think it's kind of a moot point, but I'm glad we're talking anyway. So, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Any response from the panel?
I just wanted to respond to Stacy and I'm nervous anyway. So. I just wanted to respond to Stacy and let her know that her attendance of the city council that night and asking for the town hall and the council to address the needs of the community to address this issue is one of the reasons that I joined council. There's been a few people that have said elected officials over and over tonight. I was a planning commissioner. I was appointed to that by the former mayor. I was a board member of the defunct Cresswell Chamber of Commerce. I left the Chamber of Commerce because they were not going to have a parade. I quit. I had to give up my position on the Planning Commission. Now I'm starting to get emotional, sorry. I had to give up my position. In Cresswell, you cannot be a planning commissioner and a city councilor at the same time, because the Planning Commission brings proposals, thank you, thank you, Ed, to the council for approval. and it would be a conflict if you were bringing the proposal and voting on the proposal. So I had to give up something that I cared very deeply about, the growth and housing needs in Cresswell, to become a city councilor. And I was appointed. Councilor Osborne and I were the only citizens of Cresswell that applied to be city councilors. Just let that sink in.
I wanted to, but I haven't been there long.
Thank you, Stacy. Attending that council meeting that Stacy spoke at, I got some good feedback from the counselors that were on the council at that time, that they did want more citizen involvement, and they wanted to talk about this issue and put it behind them. And I'm proud that we kept that promise, and I feel very sad that Mr. Tuff, who I probably politically align with damn well, feels slandered. I am not an elected official. I'm an appointed official because we weren't in an election cycle, and there was a vacancy on the council. I stepped up to try to make a difference and have point of views, diversity on the council. As far as the comment about protecting freedoms, I encourage you to attend city council meetings. We all took an oath. My husband started crying when I said I would defend the Constitution of the United States. So I think maybe some folks have come in tonight to this town hall believing that we're enemies here on the panel, and we're not enemies. We're each representing constituents out in the community, and though we may not agree on issues, we are working together to represent the citizens. So I applaud you, and I'm sorry for taking so long, Cameron.
All right.
But I just encourage everyone that as we're looking at these ordinances and the permitting process for public gathering, which is our right as Americans to gather, as we look at that ordinance, come to the meetings. Help us at our work sessions and let your voice be heard.
Might I have 1 minute?
Go ahead.
I asked to be on the city council because I want to represent all of you, not just people who agree with me, not people who just think about me, but all of your needs and your wants. We can't do everything for everybody, but we're going to try.
Thank you.
All right, if we have no other responses from the panel, let's get our next audience member up to the mic.
My name's Misty Fox. I'm a candidate for a county commissioner position right now. I'm from Deadwood. I'm here to remind the ones who sat here during the parade last year that you are public servants. You were put there for our voice. We do not need permission to express our constitutionally protected rights. Sheriffs are our first line against defense with tyranny. All I seen, besides these great patriots putting on a very patriotic Independence Day, was from the city was tyranny. Citing people for expressing their First Amendment protected right is wrong. And your comment about the charter cannot go against the U.S. and Oregon Constitution. That is our supreme law. Anything that goes against that is void. I suggest everybody read the Constitution, learn it, and start upholding it.
Any follow-up from the panel? Okay. Next up from the audience, please.
I'm Julie. I did the parade in 2020 and 2021. You guys did a timeline, so let me give you a little bit of my timeline. I've gone to the parade for many years, and when I found out that it was canceled, I wasn't gonna let that happen. 4th of July is not really what it's about. It is Independence Day. And so Kate Brown was not gonna be able to take my Independence Day or the Independence Day from my community. So I called the city to get a permit. I was told by Michelle Amberg that the city was not giving permits, that it just wasn't possible to get one. But she did encourage me to apply and pay, I think, $270 because it was beyond a deadline. And anyway, and in that conversation, I was like, wait, but I thought you said you couldn't give me a permit. So they wanted the money and were gonna refuse the permit. So I called the sheriff. I called our elected sheriff, Cliff Harold. I told him, I'm gonna have a parade, I'm not gonna have a permit. What are my repercussions? He told me that parade is considered protected under the First Amendment on 3 tenets: right to peaceable assembly, freedom of speech, and redress of grievances, and that it had been upheld as the First Amendment protected right in multiple Supreme Court cases. He said that no parade has ever needed a permit unless you're asking for a closed course. I said, we're not blocking any streets. He said, then all you're required to do is obey traffic controls, which we did. So I got a call from the local nursing home in 2020. She said that nobody had, she said that at that time, it had been months since the lockdowns, that she felt more like they had inmates than patients, because they were forced to eat in their room. They weren't allowed to have any activities, and they hadn't had any visitors in 4 months. She asked me to run the parade through their parking lot, and I said yes, without even knowing where they're at, because how can you say no to that? So it was about 8 blocks out of the way, but we did it. So when we got on course and we came to the where we turned down second, I called to let them know that we were about 8 blocks out, and she said in tears, I didn't get anybody ready. And I said, why? And she said, the city called and told us you weren't coming. So I don't know who all did that, but somebody in the city called the nursing home and told them not to get people ready. I told her, we're coming anyway, get anybody ready that you can. We paused. They were rushing people out in wheelchairs. They were running around opening blinds. The people on horseback rode up onto the apron and let people touch the horses. Then they went along the windows and people could reach out and touch the horses. The nursing home workers were crying. At one point, they came up and said, we didn't get a chance to get anybody in the back. Would you do what you did out front and ride past the windows? And they did. And that right there, that one incident is why I will never apply for a permit, and I had no intention of applying for a permit this year. Because to me, this is small town corruption, and we all see at a national level what that gets you. It gets you tyranny. And when I called Cliff Harold, he was very plain. He was very helpful. And I'm just not okay. I'm not okay with what's been happening here. It's cost me over $10,000 in attorney's fees because some yahoo at the city decided that they would ask me to sign myself up for probation and call it a deferred sentencing agreement. Hell no. So now, thank you. I hope you all feel good, but I'm about $10,000 in debt.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You're at the 4-minute mark, so please wrap it up.
Yay for you. And I have to compliment you on making your irrational fears so obvious.
All right. I have a feeling we have some follow-up from the panel on this one.
I will only say that as far as any comments that the sheriff has made personally, you will need to reach out to him to verify whether or not he said specifically that.
Anyone else? Ms. Amberg?
I am curious about the statements that are being made that no traffic violations were committed. I know that in fact, excuse me, no. I know for a fact that stop signs were not recognized. I know for a fact that people were on opposite sides of the street. The street was completely blocked off. I know that there were several traffic violations that occurred. So to say that there were no traffic violations is inaccurate on your part.
But the rest of it is verified?
The rest of what?
Of what she said. You said that the traffic part was inaccurate. The rest of what she accused the council and the city of is verified?
No, it's not verified. It isn't implied. It isn't implied. The lack of my response does not imply that it is verified.
All right. Any other panelists? Okay. Next up from the audience.
Thank you, folks. My name is Bill Farrell from Cottage Grove. Try to keep it short and sweet. I worked 10 hours today. I got a wife and a boy at home, so I kind of hungry, haven't eaten dinner or anything, and took some time away from my family just to come voice some opinions of the community. I've known Chris for quite a while, and he's been a very humble guy, and I've just been kind of confused with what I have heard through the community and what I have seen, not through rumors, from what your city and what our media has published on the situation. And I did show up late, and when I walked in, I immediately seen, you may not consider it slander necessarily under the defined definition, but when I do walk in, I do see Chris's name blasted on the board up there, and I'm shocked by the community and the response on what has occurred during a 4th of July parade from Americans in an American community. I'm kind of baffled. My father, grandfather fought in World War II. Great-grandfather fought in World War II. My grandfather fought in Vietnam. My father fought in Desert Storm. My brother's in the National Guard, and I was denied because of medical disability. We do a lot for our community through my family, and I just want to make sure it's expressed that I'm not alone. And there are a lot of people in this community that feel the way that I feel, and they can't come here today. So I'm coming here today to speak for them, and I am not from your community, but I have family and friends that love this town. They love what you guys do, and they are shocked, they are disappointed, and they are depressed. They're not getting the representation they need, and that is solely your fault. It does not fall on our fault. We are here, we are speaking, we are doing what we need to do on our end, we are expressing our freedoms, and we are not getting the representation we need from our elected officials that we have chosen. Some have been appointed, some have been deeply chosen from us through our community, and we're not getting that representation. And as I sat here, a few questions have occurred to me, and I would like to give those to you. Whether you choose to respond, I understand it's late, but these are questions that I have come to and have occurred to me while sitting here listening to you folks speak. Did the city, and were they aware of the parade occurring, whether there was a permit applied or not? And why were the safety protocols not put out? Because I have been at multiple protests that have been established without a permit. And there were barricades, there were police, there was roadblocks, because it was a protest. But because Chris Tuff and other individuals chose to comply with the city and chose to work with them and chose to go for a permit, they've been chastised over certain things that they had no control over. But if they would have chose to not get your opinion and not involve you whatsoever, you would have provided the safety and would have allowed it under free speech. Thank you.
Responses from the panel.
I, I think from what, well, first of all, thank you for your family and their service, first most. But I think my response to that was if a permit would have been pulled, we wouldn't be here today.
I'll just say that we were aware of the parade. We had no idea how large it would be, how many people would show. And without any type of plan put by the parade organizers, other than, I got some guys that are gonna take care of things, and everything's gonna be okay, we can't put a safety plan into place. I had the exact same amount of deputies in the city on that particular day that I have had for the last 6 years for the parade. The only thing is that it feels safer when we have only those 3 deputies in town, because we have roadblocks that are provided by the Chamber of Commerce. They pay for all of that with the funds that they use to put on the parade. So roadblocks, people demand those roadblocks, people to put those roadblocks in place. The company that brings the roadblocks, they work with city staff to make sure that if they don't have enough roadblocks, they can get them out there. That's what the permitting process is for. It's not to oppress anybody. It's not to make anybody not be able to put out whatever free speech they want. And believe me, I'm all for free speech, but I want it to be done safely. Chaos happens when everybody just does their own thing. And I'm sorry it's that way, but we are also a country of laws. That's why we have the Constitution. It's a country of laws. And you vote for the laws. So if we don't want the laws, you have to change those who are making the laws.
Okay.
There been no initiation with the city whatsoever, it would have fell under free speech, and they could have done it without the organization and the permit?
No, it would still fall under the same purview.
How is your ordinance, I guess, applicable different than what Springfield and Eugene's is? Because I did experience it multiple times.
It is.
Okay. If that's the answer.
So
Right.
I just have one other follow-up on that one. So along with the permit process, there is the piece of it that it requires insurance. It's not cheap, costs some money, and there's a reason for that because anything can happen. So,
Protests don't buy insurance either.
well, they don't, but, right.
I'm just trying to make it clear. Right.
Okay, but, so we were lucky that nothing happened. But what if something had happened?
Like the mayor?
No, let's just go with the example of a child. I'm speaking.
All right,
so
excuse me, folks. One person at a time. Mr. Proshu is speaking.
Okay, so let's just say that a child got killed, all right? And then somebody sues the city. And the city, well, now we've got to foot that bill. So my question for you then is, could we just pass that bill back on to you? Are you willing to, you're willing to do everything else, but are you willing to pay the massive lawsuit that could have happened?
They do anyways, it's called taxes.
It's not how it works.
It is how it works.
All right.
It's like the parade saving you guys hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
All right, moving on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the panel on that question?
So on 4th of July, I don't do social media, but and 4th of July I was like one of many in Crestwell who'd heard that there might be a parade. So I wandered down and just walked around, kind of mixing with the crowd, and then I went over towards 76 to get a soda pop, and then I wandered back to the railroad tracks and I stopped there because I saw the parade coming east. So I want to address what's been brought up, that there were not any road violations, because the city of Crestwell, we have responsibility for city roads, but where Oregon Avenue and 99 intersect, and then it does that funny jag goes over the railroad tracks, that's a state highway. That whole left corner and everything going south past the Dairy Mart is state highway, Highway 99. So what I saw was Normally, the parade comes up to Oregon Avenue and First Street, and then turns left. And it's a big intersection, and that left turn onto a very large, wide road, sidewalks on either side, and then it heads up north. The parade last year continued past First Street to 99, which if you're familiar with that intersection, if you turn right, you're going south on 99. If you turn left, you're going past the Roundup Tavern. And that's a very narrow intersection. And I watched as what looked like a combine tried to make that left turn, which is a one-way road with cars coming this way and then parallel parking. I thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? And people were very careful. They maneuvered around there. But as I watched traffic coming over 99, coming from the east, trying to make the left turn or go straight, it was very clear that there was massive road blockage right there. So I just want to interject that. Yes, there was quite a bit of road blockage at that intersection, and that's not a road that the city necessarily controls because that's a state highway at that point. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stram.
Hi, my name's Kirsten. I live in Eugene at the other end of Ham Road. So I'd like to point out a couple things that you guys have already admitted up here today. You, sir, have mentioned that if a permit was pulled, we wouldn't be here. But there was clearly attempts to do so, and they were denied. In fact, they were encouraged with what seems to be the known fact that they would be denied, which right there is not a good thing to do. Sir, you also mentioned that ordinances have no authority over state and federal laws. So right here, I mean, we have a decision being based on essentially an ordinance that violates a constitutional right protected by law, a law that all of you swore an oath to uphold. So if you do not do the right thing here and honor your oaths, you're all guilty of malfeasance, okay? And I think that that's a very serious thing that you really need to look into. I don't know about at your level, if you have bonds individually, I'm fairly certain that the sheriff is bonded, which I do encourage everyone in here who has been fined to pull the bonds on these officials and their oaths, because you're going to need them. And I also want to say, to be a strong leader, you need to have the faith and the trust of your community. And what's happening here is that you're taking this stand up here today, sitting higher than the rest of the people in the room. Yet you have failed to protect the people who are here. Yet you're doing nothing to protect them from the things that are a harm to them. Like they've mentioned, many of them have come up here and mentioned the things with Black Lives Matter. Okay, they want to see if you're going to come after them for something that's in good faith, key here, good faith. They made every good faith effort to do this correctly. They tried to take care of their mess and be responsible. Okay, that's important. There was no intention to cause harm. Okay, but it seems like from the other side, there was intention to cause harm by encouraging applications that you knew were going to be denied. How much of a financial loss was that to the people who applied? What other financial losses they had from the fines that you put upon them? Wrongfully. Do you know what intentional infliction of emotional distress is? Because right now, you are all committing that upon these people who you've wrongfully decided committed crimes that they didn't commit. Where are your victims? Where are the victims of these crimes? I want to see them up here saying how they were harmed by these people who you fined. Do you have any? And I'm sorry, sir, but being inconvenienced, that's not a crime. So what I'm here to do tonight is to ask you to do the right thing. This is an opportunity for you to restore your honor and to restore the trust of your people. And if you choose not to, then I'm going to encourage everybody in this room to hold you accountable for malfeasance.
Excuse me, ma'am. One person at a time.
And that's what I came to say. Thank you for your attention.
Anything from the panel? Okay. Next up from the audience, please.
Hi, my name's Bonnie Sano. Technically, I have a Cottage Grove address, but I live actually in the county between Cottage Grove and here. I wasn't at the parade this past year. I just didn't get there. I've been to a lot of the parades. I really like them. I feel like this is a real Cresswell tradition that should go forward. I feel like it's a patriotic thing that people who want to put it on or want to see it put on should not have to pay to get a permit for, because I think this is a Cresswell thing. I would hope that the city of Cresswell would sponsor it going forward. I think there were lots of mistakes made by both sides this past year, unintentionally from both sides, but there were mistakes. I have followed the truckers in Canada recently, and I've seen that the Western countries, our freedoms are being slowly constricted and denied. I know of Germany's 1930s and 40s, and they were just following orders. They were just following from what their leaders told them to do or not to do. I think that when the governor, first of all, the governor was not always following medical science. Maybe the first year she had a right to call for a pandemic. But the second year, I think it was more political science than it was medical science. I'm a retired nurse also. So going forward, I would ask that the council, when you decide your ordinances, that you decide by wisdom and not just following what the higher-ups, whether it's the governor or the president or whatever says, because I can see that they are all overstepping their bounds in many, many ways. I do not want to see Western civilization destroyed by the, Council on World Economics or whatever. You know, we have a very unique country, and we should be setting our ordinances, our rules, our laws from the bottom up, not from the top down. Thank you, and I hope we have many, many more parades, and I hope that the city of Cresswell sponsors it.
All right. Okay, Mr. Prachu.
Did you have a question too, or? Okay, we'll let you come up and do yours first before I say anything. Okay.
Sean Lurch, I live in Eugene. I respect everybody here. We are fighting out here in the world, asking for American citizens to come and sit up here to listen to us, to meet on middle ground. If you put your slideshow and what I heard from right here in front of a jury, it'd be a hung jury. Because evidently, someone's been deceiving on this side, and there may be a little deceiving on this side, but everybody's wrong. Common sense would have came into play when everybody here was at the time knew this parade was going to happen. Instead of trying to put up roadblocks, come alongside the people who are putting on and said, let's do it safely. What was wrong with that picture? You knew before July 4th there's going to be 1,000 people in your streets. Why not come alongside and say, we'll figure this out later, but let's do it safely now? There's question one. Question two is, I respect the uniform, ex-military, I respect the service, I believe in blue. I saw you coming down the road into the crowd with your car when we're carrying the big flag down the street so you could take pictures of the flag and violators. My question is, why didn't you and your deputies protect the public instead of worried about pictures? Secondly, or thirdly, is we had an event following 4th of July where we started a caravan in Springfield. You already had a bunch of people here. A bunch of people showed up from the caravan in Springfield. You had 3 BLM people blocking your road in front of your courthouse, and no one stopped and arrested them for blocking traffic. And I saw 6, 8 vehicles around that I knew were law enforcement. So why is the law okay for one set, but not for the other set? Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. So it looks like Sergeant Denham's going to take this one.
I'll answer your second question first, because I have the video of that whole event where we had one group versus another group. Both groups were at some times in the wrong, blocking the road. When a caravan of cars comes through, and I've only got a few cops there, we're not going to deal with a whole bunch of people.
Let me just follow up. These 3 individuals on the side of the building on the sidewalk and having conversations, of course it's heated, but they purposely walked out in the middle of the street and the sidewalk and blocked it. We were trying to pull them out of the way to get everybody safely out of the way, but everybody else in law enforcement sat on the sideline. This is why we're in shreds between the different groups and different beliefs. We're not getting treated the same. Look at Portland, it's running down I-5, up and down between Oregon, Canada and Mexico. We're not getting the fair shot. If I was
in that instance, I guess I don't know what in particular you're talking about, because no one reported it, and I don't have any view of it.
Yeah, I forgot to ask one more question. You knew about the mayor scaring the horses and the kids. You knew about that, correct?
I saw it about 4 days later on Facebook.
Okay, so you investigated the people that put on the parade so you could give them citations? Why not find the video of the lady doing that and give her a citation?
Because video that I don't take for a violation is inadmissible, and I cannot cite them by your state laws.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Secondly, to the beginning of your question, I did try to reach out to Chris, and Chris said, I got it handled, it'll be safe. I got a guy who's got experience in putting on these events, and that was it. There wasn't any desire to come back and engage. I even told him, I will make sure that if you want to put in a permit, that we will get copies of the previous blockages and everything. You'll only have to look at it and put it all back together. You have to arrange for the barricades. We don't have enough deputies in this county to be able to respond down and do the roadblocks for a major parade. I'm sorry, we just don't. We have 26 deputies in our main office and 4 in Cresswell. That's it, to handle a state the size of Connecticut and the calls. So when a homicide comes in 2 hours before the parade and the state police are helping with find the suspect who went from Fall Creek all the way down to London Road, you know, we've got what we have, and we're able to do with what we have. So we have to pick what kind of enforcement we can do, what kind of protections we can do. And I was actually taking pictures while my car was parked, blocking the other way traffic so that they wouldn't try to drive underneath the people and underneath the flag, because there was 5 cars parked on the side of the road in front of me with drivers in them trying to go the other direction, because the wine country was actually operating during that time. And people go out through Oregon Avenue, out Chemist Whale and Ham Road to the wine country. So, yeah, I was taking pictures to get the evidence that I would need if I needed to do something as far as the parade goes. But I was also blocking traffic so nobody else would continue to try to go down the street while that flag was moving.
So the outcome will be exactly the same, permit or no permit, with the same amount of deputies. I don't understand. It's about money, just limited. That's right.
People lining up again, double dipping. I think we need to shut it down and say everybody.
No, and neither were the people because they were both blocking the roads in that instance. That's all I'm going to say about that one, because I've already investigated complaints on that.
You could have taken pictures and charged him later.
Like you did Julie and Chris.
All right, folks, we are way over time here at this point, and we still want to give our panel the opportunity to give us some thoughts on what will be happening at the 2022 parade. So any final answers to that last question? I think Mr. Prachu had some comments.
Follow up to that? It'll be very fast. Go ahead. Okay, follow up for the officer. For the concern that this gentleman shared about the mayor, and you said, I am fully well aware that you cannot prosecute off of a video from somebody else. I'm aware of the hearsay laws. My question to you is that if someone files a complaint that they've witnessed it with their own eyes and they sign an affidavit, would you follow up with it?
People are able to file a complaint with the city anytime, and we will cite that person on behalf of the city based on their complaint.
So what
But
I'm understanding.
what you're describing is they have to be able to articulate that there was a law broken.
Well, people felt assaulted in that moment.
They felt what?
Assaulted in that
Insulted?
moment. Assaulted.
Assaulted?
Yes.
Okay, well, if they can make the laws of assault or the elements of assault stick with something like that, then we would charge it. They would have to ask the DA to do that, though, on their behalf. People can go to the district attorney's office at any time and file a complaint with the district attorney, and the district attorney will look at those charges and their evidence and determine whether or not they want to file charges.
Encourage you to do that.
So horses have the right of way and are considered
Go ahead.
mode of transportation, and they have the right of way when it comes to vehicles. So she committed a crime doing that, and we know that, and you know that. And you say that you can't investigate something off of videos and stuff, and you can't cite afterwards, but you cited Chris and Julie both afterwards.
For something that happened in my presence,
That happened in your presence.
which is in the law. No.
Yeah, there's video.
The only thing, okay, that's not in my presence. That's in somebody else's presence. The law is very clear on that. A violation for traffic, and there is nothing in the traffic code that says animal has the right of way.
It does have it in the Oregon driver's manual, that horses
Okay, well,
have the right of
I don't abide by the Oregon driver's manual. I abide by the Oregon traffic.
All right, ma'am,
statutes.
appreciate that. I know we have a couple people that are wanting to speak, but you've already spoken. So I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the evening. Thank you so much for all of you who
guys spoke to Julie
all right.
every city council meeting that pertained to the parade, and that is wrong.
We've waited this long. Julie has the right to speak. You've cited her. She
You
has the right
kicked
to
her out of
speak
every
again.
council meeting that pertained to the parade. This is her time to speak.
Well, she's already spoken. She's already had her opportunity to speak this evening. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, ma'am. This matter's closed.
These are the basic rules that we have at every council meeting, that every person has a chance to come up and speak once. So we're following the same rules that we follow at every council meeting, and it would not be fair if we didn't follow the rules. In fact, we...
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to leave if you don't take your seat and stop being disruptive. Thank you. So we've established that we will have pancakes in 2022. I believe, is this Mr. Ladley will address other future plans?
We definitely wanted to try to end on a positive note. So Bobby, can you tell us about maybe some of the cool things coming up for the 4th of July this year?
So I will say that the Chamber of Commerce will absolutely have 4th of July put on. We will have a parade. We will have fireworks back at the high school. I'm happy to report the fireworks, the high school, and the Chamber of Commerce do have an agreement in place. We will be back at the high school this year. We will also do the pancake breakfast, and we're looking forward to it. And certainly, the Chamber could use any and all volunteers that are willing to step forward. We are an all-volunteer organization, and most of us have full-time jobs, so we don't have a lot of time. Yes, ma'am.
This is off the subject of 4th of July, but are you also going to have the Mother's Day citywide
Mother's Day citywide yard sale is on. You can find information on the Chamber Facebook page and on our website. So absolutely, it is in place. It is very neat. And just for those who are still here, just on a personal note, you know, as you can probably tell from my voice, I am not from Cresswell. I literally have never seen a Cresswell fireworks show or parade pre-COVID. But when I learned that the chamber was struggling and they needed volunteers, I grew up in a small town. I appreciate tradition. I understood the importance of making sure that we carried on the fireworks, we carried on the parades. And that's why I and every other board member for the chamber volunteered. We're not getting paid for this, but we absolutely want to represent Cresswell well. We want to restore the historical semblance of 4th of July for the city, for Cresswell, for its residents. And, you know, it's a thankless position when things don't go well, but we're looking forward to a lot of things this year because things are going to go well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prachu?
I'm just going to say thanks again to a few folks. New Hope Baptist, again, for allowing us the use of the facilities. Really appreciate that. For the folks that were here on the panel tonight that were not involved or even in office during that time, thank you for being up here. I think that means a lot. It shows a sign to the community that you care too. And also to the folks, most of them left already, but I really do thank you guys for coming. When Julie first came in and I greeted her and I said, I'm really glad that you came. And she looked at me like I was crazy. But the truth is that we need to listen. And, you know, even if we don't come to a conclusion tonight, being good listeners is an important part of our job. And so we just thank everybody that showed up. That's all I have to say about that.
If I could add one more thing before we wrap up, and this is really to address the community and address those that unfortunately left. From my perspective, it's a lot more important than it's not important that we are all like-minded, but it's critically important that we are all like-valued. We need to have like values as they relate to our community, as they relate to doing the right thing. And I believe the individuals that left, I believe we all in this room share that value. We all value community. We all value doing the right thing. We may have a different mindset or a different belief on how we go about achieving those. But, you know, I think moving forward as we put the past behind us and move forward with this year, being like valued is something that we can all rally behind. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ladley. And once again, let me just thank our panel for taking their time out of their evening to join us. And again, thank you to those of you who are with us in person, those who have joined us on YouTube. You're here and you've taken the time to be part of this event because you care. And I know our panelists and folks in this community appreciate that. So with that, I will wish you a happy remainder of your Tuesday evening. And I think we're all looking forward to the parade in July of 2022. As someone who's enjoyed the parade as a participant for many years from the radio station and just watching it in my younger years before that, I know we're all eager to return to something closer to normal. So again, thank you all for your time this evening and safe travels home.